Today marks 5 years since the release of Star Wars Battlefront 2, one of the most controversial video games of all time that changed the face of the gaming industry forever. Containing one of the worst launches in video game history and arguably one of the best, if not the best, comeback in video game history. This game essentially built this channel from absolutely nothing, and I still remember when we had that first leaked trailer all those years ago, seeing Darth Maul and seeing Yoda, seeing some of our favorite heroes in an entirely new Battlefront experience. It was just such a hyped time. Following up from DICE's Star Wars Battlefront in 2015, there was simply no better time to be a Star Wars fan than the lead up to this game's release. Battlefront 2 was about to come out, people were riding the Star Wars high off The Force Awakens and Rogue One with The Last Jedi right around the corner. Then Battlefront 2 just made waves in the gaming industry for all the wrong reasons at its beginning, and then it made waves again for all the wrong reasons when it came to an end. The best way to sum up Battlefront 2 in a nutshell is waste of potential. No 3 words sum up this game better than that. So as it's been 5 years since this game is released, and 5 years is a pretty big milestone, in this video we're going to take a brief look back at the controversies, the highs, the lows, what the game is like today, of what remains as one of the better Star Wars games of recent time. Granted, there hasn't exactly been many of them to choose from, but either way, we're going to take a trip down memory lane of this incredible waste of potential. The controversy of Battlefront 2, we all know it by this point, so I'm not going to painstakingly recap it beat for beat, but I do think it's important in a video celebrating 5 years since its release to remember arguably what the game is known for best, whether it's a good thing or not. Battlefront 2 launched as a pay-to-win mess, with a game structure built entirely around having to open up your wallet, whether it was getting the best star cards, or unlocking Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. The game's infrastructure was absolutely terrible. When the beta of the game released, it was fun, Naboo was incredible, but people noticed that the credit system was off. It didn't matter where you finished on the leaderboard, it seemed that you'd earn the same amount of credits, and it wasn't much. But then the game came out, and the pay-to-win system had nowhere to hide. Thankfully, fans pushed back and said enough was enough, and EA were forced to rethink their method with this game's monetization. DICE were then forced to build an entirely new progression system. To their credit, months later, they had a new one in place. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it got the job done. And it's essentially the same system we have in the game 5 years later with only a few changes. Not only was this entire debacle a big deal for Battlefront 2, but it changed the gaming industry forever. Pay-to-win games aren't as common as they once were, and it's because of Battlefront 2. So to say this game started out poorly would be an understatement. A Star Wars game with unlimited potential being hindered by a pay-to-win system. It was sad, but things quickly changed as time went by. The start of Battlefront 2's redemption arc was in full swing. The game had a decent amount of content at launch despite all the controversies. It improved in a big way over the game's predecessor, which was severely lacking in content. But after a few months of radio silence from DICE as they were hard at work building a new progression system, fans noticed that the game had just become stale. But then content started to arrive. The solo DLC, Ewok Hunt, Clone Wars content, new heroes, maps, game modes, you name it, the game was receiving fresh new content that continued to drive the player base up and keep existing players engaged. Now, having a YouTube channel surrounding this game allowed me to see firsthand exactly what happened with this game's community, and I must say I have never seen a gaming community stick by a game like I did with Battlefront 2. This game had one of the most loyal fan bases I have ever seen for a video game that put them through so much. It just went to show the power that a good Battlefront game can have amongst Star Wars fans, which is something that Lucasfilm games need to start realizing as we look to the future of Star Wars games. Because these fans are still sitting there waiting for this franchise's return. Now, as for the content, the new content proved that this game was building into something special. The game had well and truly turned itself around. It was the definitive multiplayer Star Wars experience, and it was a damn good one. The game's past had been put behind it, and fans completely adored the game. Battlefront 2 slowly developed, becoming the ultimate Battlefront game. Something for every single Star Wars fan was present in abundance. Prequel fans, original trilogy fans, sequel fans, even Clone Wars TV show fans had something for them. Word of mouth began to spread around the game's comeback, and the player base just got bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. The game would then hit its peak at the end of 2019. The Rise of Skywalker was about to release, a massive content drop surrounding the film came into the game, the interest in Battlefront 2 had gone through the roof, and the rotten stigma that the game had earned itself was finally brought to an end. Anyone who still made the "this game is pay to win" comment essentially just made themselves look stupid. Everything had truly turned around, at least for a little while. Battlefront 2 was completely thriving. It had gotten to the point where DICE were adding heroes like BB-8, getting experimental with content. They were adding fan favorite maps from DICE's previous Battlefront. It finally felt like the game was no longer playing catch up with where it should have been, and it was time that the game's live service could truly expand the game into making it the definitive Battlefront game to end all Battlefront games. The endless potential of Battlefront 2 looked as if it was about to be explored in a big way, but then the worst possible thing happened. EA decided to shut down the game's live service whilst it was in its prime, in order to move the DICE developers over to Battlefield, which at the time was a dwindling franchise, which it still is, as the focus off Battlefront that was put into Battlefield did not work. In fact, it actually only made things worse for the Battlefield franchise, releasing perhaps its worst entry ever. Battlefront 2 died so the Battlefield franchise could dig its hole even deeper. They lost a game that was thriving and in its prime to fail at saving a franchise that was absolutely struggling. The worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. Naturally, fans were not happy about this. Even people who didn't really play Battlefront 2 weren't happy and chimed into the conversation. How could you cut a game down in its prime like this? Well, fans gathered in numbers, organizing petitions that exceeded over 100,000 signatures, but it was to no avail. Battlefront 2 was dead and it wasn't coming back. It has been 2.5 years now since Battlefront 2 came to an end, and if you ask Star Wars fans what game they want to see, the vast majority of them are going to tell you Battlefront 3, or to bring this game's live service back. Unfortunately, majority of the developers that worked on Battlefront 2 have left DICE entirely, many of them often expressing their disappointment in how Battlefront 2 was cut short in its prime. Unfortunately, after the game had been dead for a while, we started to learn more about the game's future, what was in store for this game if it kept going, and this just made things worse. We learned that heroes such as Ahsoka Tano and Asajj Ventress were in the works, and planets like Mustafar were going to come into the game, the iconic planet from Revenge of the Sith. Battlefront 2 was truly cut off in its prime, and fans still to this day are clamoring for a new installment in the franchise. Even 2.5 years on from its cancellation, majority of the comments on any EA Star Wars Twitter post or Lucasfilm Games Twitter post are met with fans asking for Battlefront 3. And with almost 10 confirmed Star Wars games in the works, not even one of them looks like it's going to be anything close to Battlefront, with Star Wars seemingly being allergic to creating a multiplayer Star Wars game to fill this void. There is truly no happy ending for Battlefront fans. Battlefront 2 right now, unfortunately, has wailed in recent times. Fans have been playing a game without any new content for over 2.5 years now, and the player base is finally starting to fade away. All of this is despite the player base actually continuing really strong after the game's cancellation, out of pure fact that there was just nothing else for these fans to play. There was no other alternative Star Wars games. And sadly, 2.5 years on from the game's cancellation, there still isn't. Now, it isn't exactly easy to find games on platforms such as PC for Battlefront 2, however, you will find lobbies on console in some of the more popular game modes. There are many mods to try out that can kind of create the illusion that this game became what it was capable of, but the disappointment of the game's abandonment still looms large over the game as a whole. If you can find lobbies, this is still the definitive Star Wars multiplayer experience. There is still fun to be had on this game. Again, because there is simply no other option for Star Wars fans looking for their multiplayer shooter fix, and it doesn't look like there will be another option anytime soon, which is still mind-blowing considering how popular this game was. Now, there are still maxed out sweatlords all over the servers, and hackers are present on PC, but I do find it fun to jump back into Battlefront 2 every now and then, have that little nostalgia hit, and then get sad that this is seemingly where Battlefront's story ends. So, Battlefront 2, 5 years later, are you still playing Battlefront 2? What is your favorite Battlefront 2 memory? Let me know in the comments below. Are you going to jump back into Battlefront 2 now that it's been half a decade since the game was released? Again, let me know in those comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like to show your support and drop a sub if you haven't already, because Jedi Survivor news is right around the corner. We should be hearing news about this game on December 8th, so stay tuned as I will have all the updates right here on this channel. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and Lucasfilm Games, this is for you. It is time to make a new Battlefront game.